Good afternoon, class. I'm making this video for you guys in case you are confused about the reading or had questions but didn't feel to ask during the office hours. If you still have questions after this video you watched, feel free to email me. I will get back to you within a day. But either way, this reading assignment is due on Monday, 4 points. And I just want to go over each question and give you hints and helpful tips for answering it in case you're very confused. Because there's some things that are in this reading that we didn't go over in class, right? We mainly focused on hands-on activities, creating things and painting things, not exactly how everything worked when it went into the kiln and all the science behind that. So first of all, the first question is about porcelain, and this is all about bone china. And this is a type of clay and a type of ceramics that was found in China for the last over 1,500 years, and it caught on to the rest of the world. So Europeans, back when they did missions to China, found it and really liked it and started buying a lot of it, and then they started making their own and so forth, and so it just came prevalent. If you have very white dishes at home or bowls at home or cups, whatever, it's mostly made of porcelain or what's considered bone china. Obviously it was probably made in the US, and or some cases it actually is still made in China, but it is common because of the fact of how strong it is. You can drop it, and a lot of times it won't even break, or if it does, it'll just chip. It won't just shatter into a billion pieces like glass does. And it also can be made very, very thin. So it can get so thin you can put it to the light and you can see through it. So the first question's noting that clay is not dug up from the ground. I mean, some cases it is, but in this case, it's a mixture with different materials, usually from the ground, and combined into a mixture or recipe that is most usable when it's fired in the clay. And the one thing we never talked about that it's kind of a chemistry thing, but if you have something that melts, right? So you have like a block of cheese and you put it in a microwave or oven. You know what happens to that block of cheese? It turns gooey, it melts, and you can think of a lot of stuff with like food, in particular, or even plastic. You know, some plastics, if it gets hot enough, it will melt. Not everything that gets up to its melting point does melt. So, for example, ceramics, the clay, when it's in the kiln and it gets up to 2167 degrees, it keeps its shape. And so what happens when it cools down, it becomes hard again, just like anything would, like cheese or whatever, but it's now stronger, and that's called refractory. So you got to keep in mind that not everything that can melt also just turns into a liquid. Some things that have a melting point retain their shape and become stronger after they are cooled off. So the things that are in bone china and particularly porcelain are feldspar, silica, and what's called kaolin, and then bone ash. And I'll go over these real quick. So feldspar is really common mineral rock that you find. It's really easy to crack. I even see it around here. It's something you can probably break apart easily with a hammer. So it's very common, and it's very powdery when it's broken up. And it's usually broken up and then mixed into the clay. So it kind of is the support. Silica, as you can see, looks like glass, and it is glass. And what's often used in ceramics is sand, which is also silica. And when it's mixed with the clay, it just helps fuse things together. Kaolin is the interesting one. It's kind of like lime. That's what makes bone china special, and that's because you only can find this stuff in the China region. And that's kind of what the second question is hinting towards. Um, so this is what makes like the porcelain or bone china really, really white, right? So it has that, special color to it that's really bright white that is not common around the world, and it's especially found because of this, and it's named after the location that it is found in. And actually, colon is used in medicine. It's used for a lot of different things, and it's very chalky. It's also used in paper and rubber and stuff. So it's very common material used in China. And the last one, the weird one, is bone ash, and that is literally taking bones and burning them. And once you burn them to a certain temperature, I think it's 1600, it turns into a powder, much like wood is burned at a certain temperature. It turns into, charcoal. So bone ash is mixed into the clay to make you able to fire it at a lower temperature. And it also makes it more translucent when it's made a certain way. So it gives it those properties that are famous porcelain, even including some whiteness. So the idea, and it's actually a lot of it in porcelain, like half of the clay itself is bone ash. And the idea is using it is to make it that special white that if it's thin enough can be like see-through, as you saw in some of the pictures in the reading, or if you even looked up some pictures, you probably found it there too. But the bone they're using is cow bone, so don't get any crazy ideas. It's mainly due because cows live in the same place, they eat the same thing, so it's just consistent. And of course, cows are used for other things like beef, and so they use it for food as well. So they just have all these leftover bones, so they use them in the clay to make porcelain. So that is why they use cow bone. But that is the last one, and bone ash is probably the most important one because it's makes up 50% of porcelain. Half of porcelain clay is mixture of bone ash, cow bone. Yeah. And so that covers the first two questions. And the last question here is just talking about our experience in class before of using what was called the 50-50 or half and half. And that was the one that was gray. So we used three clays. The first one we used was called B-Mix. It kind of has a beige color. When it comes out, it kind of looks like that off yellowish white. The second one we used was the gray, the 50-50. That looks gray when you use it, and then when it fires, it turns bright white. And then the last one we just used before we had to leave was the Santa Fe, I believe it's called, but the red clay. So it's just asking you to talk about your experience using 50-50 because you didn't know this, or maybe you did because I told you, or you learned it. That 50-50 is half porcelain clay and half another clay, which I'm not exactly sure what it was, but you've already had some experience working kind of with porcelain, and that's why when it was fired, it always came out bright white. That was the porcelain clay, or specifically the bone ash. So once again, I hope that helps, and you just need to answer these three questions, 4 to 5 sentences, based on the reading, based on that video, even based on what I said right now. I think next week, after Monday, like Tuesday, I will be announcing the next project and maybe trying to get us to do a Google Meet or something where we can have a discussion or interact or have something that resembles, a normal class. I much like that, especially since I'm getting a lot of questions about what are you going to do for ceramics since it's all online. Well, in this situation, we kind of just have to make do with what technology we have and what you can learn. So, like I said, if you have any more questions for me or you need to contact me about anything, just do it over email. I hope you all are doing well.